Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this ScreenSaverz School event. Today, we are joined by Mario Kovacevic from the company Infinum. And I'm really happy to have him here because he's a very seasoned designer and he's been involved in process management and setting up career ladders and teaching designers and helping them grow. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Mario, I will let you do the introductions. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mario. I'm one of 4 design team leads at Infinum. We're a digital agency that specializes in developing digital products. We're currently a design team of 27 people and growing. My job is actually to make sure that everything goes smoothly, basically, so that the projects go well, that everything is handed over on time, that everything is prepared well. But the core of my job is actually to help designers who I mentor to fulfill their potential and to really go all the way and explore what they can do and where this whole thing can lead them.
That's quite a big job.
Yeah.
So did you always imagine that you will end up being a manager, a designer?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I actually started out I always knew that I wanted to do digital design, like even in the early 2000s. So I dug my way through graphic arts school, and I see some colleagues of mine here on this call as well. Hi, Nicolina. And after that, I actually got a job with a company that does marketing for digital media. So I made social media posts and things like that. And I started exploring digital a bit more. I knew that I wanted to do mostly websites, but at that point in 2015, apps just weren't really a thing yet. And I actually signed up for Infinum's Academy in 2016, I think. Yeah, 2016. Which helped me. It's a course that lasts for 2 months, where somebody mentors you while you create an app from scratch. So you do design work from the rough idea through wireframes, through usability testing, and then actually create a finished product, which you after that present. And that actually helped me to land a job here. And at that point, apps were cool. There was really a blooming industry and so much to learn. There's still a lot to learn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never really envisioned to become a manager. But after a couple of years, it seemed quite interesting to me because I think inherently I always wanted to help people and really help them, learn them. I have never gate kept anything in my life. And I really like to push other people forward. And that's why I'm also lecturing at the Design Academy for the last couple of years, Infinum's Design Academy. Don't get it twisted. I'm not in the school system yet.
Okay. So you've been at Infinum for, we talked about, almost 7 years now. You've seen it grow from like a very small agency to being, I think there's 300 plus people right now.
Yes, I started when I was actually 118th, something like that.
Okay.
And there's currently around 300, 400. I'm actually not even sure what the number is. Now we span through multiple countries, continents, and so on. So it happens with growth. But actually, when I came to the team, I was the 10th design team member, and now there's 27 of us in a span of 6 years. So that's quite some growth.
I know that you in this time developed quite a comprehensive career ladder at the Infineon for design, for product. Can you talk a little bit about how this came about and why do it in the first place?
So basically, the idea of the career ladder started, the career paths actually started a couple of, I'd say even 2 years ago. It was published last year, but it actually started 2 years ago when we noticed, since we're a young company, everybody that's here has been at the company for roughly, let's say, 5 years. And after a couple of years, you start questioning what you can do, what the next step is. Like, people aren't usually that concerned around titles and what they will be called, but they're interested in development skills. They're interested in pushing things forward and trying something new. And what also bugged me while I was a designer, so not a manager, but while I was a designer, I always was unsure of what the next step is. So of course, there's always bigger projects, more complex projects, whether it's in a complex product space, whether it's a difficult client or something else. The complexity can really vary. But after some point, you start to think that you grasped everything, but that's not necessarily true because we're still a young industry and there's really so much to learn. So after becoming a manager, I always wanted to create like a roadmap or an individualized career plan for everybody in the team, because at that point, as an industry, I think we were really ripe for that step, because previously, like in 2016, there was no idea of what this is going to be. We were still slicing things.
For sure, yeah.
And the handoff was a complete train wreck with at least 3 different softwares to get it across to developers. Like, but comparing it to now we actually have time to really invest ourselves, dig, research, keep up to date with the latest technologies, and we're quite agile, not the agile process, but we as designers have to be agile and adaptive. So our skills actually need to change and adapt and improve rather quickly. And the whole idea for the progression framework came from us knowing that not all individual contributors, so ICs are people who do project work, and they do project work full time and are devoted to that. So the main idea was that some people want to stay on that track. They want to keep perfecting the craft and working on projects. Other people gravitated more towards management. But management can also be divided in whether you want to manage people or you want to manage processes, because that leans more towards the IC track. So after a lot of discussions with all the teammates, seeing what they want to do, where they want to grow, whether they want to be more focused on UX, more on UI, be researchers, and so on, we figured that we need to figure out a plan that is sustainable for different career tracks. So currently, we have the IC track that goes through 4 levels. Then we have the lead designer role, which is someone who doesn't manage people directly, as you currently probably have your team lead who has one-on-ones with you, figure out career development plans and OKRs and this and that. But a lead designer would be someone who's constantly in the know of what's going on process-wise, project-wise, and who's keeping tabs that we are pushing forward all the time with our processes. So someone who assures that the project quality is on target. And that seemed interesting to some people because they weren't necessarily interested in managing people directly. So we had a lot of work to do to reassure people that not being a manager is okay. And there are different things people can do to develop their careers. Because previously, I think in most companies, you'd start working, you'd become an IC, get more and more experience. And then after some point, you'd probably go more into managing those things. And that just didn't seem realistic, neither for the company nor for the individuals. So that's where that stems from. And we started rolling it out last year. And we iterated quite a lot on it. So it wasn't an easy job. It wasn't a first pass and then we just released the thing. It took some tinkering. It took some feedback from the team. We changed and updated a bunch of different things, and I think that will be something that's necessary to do every year to revise the current skill set and where we're going with it. Some of the core competences will always be the same, like problem solving, client management, this and that, but the the technical skills are something that should often be revised. And we wanted to focus more on the soft skills, the core design skills, rather than technical feasibility.
Okay.
Because usually when you're just looking at the deliverables and what the final product, you're usually just looking at the finished thing. You don't go necessarily that in depth around the process. And that's where we wanted to kick off the conversation with everybody in the team, where we are in the know and know what to do at each and every part of the design process.
So it's always so interesting because, like you said, it used to be all about getting to the management level, or there was one path, and in reality you need quite different skill set to be like managing people or managing process or managing a project and like doing great work. So we have a first question from Anakera. In your experience, what are some skills that are needed now that weren't needed 10 years ago?
Ooh. Well, based off what's going on with AI, I think it's rather hard to answer this question. It was hard to answer it 2 years ago. Today, I'm not even sure what to say. I think one of the main skills is adaptivity and resourcefulness, because this is something that we often forget as designers, where we start out and we can always dig ourselves out from a hole. We can always figure out the next step, what to do, how to overcome it. And once you start working in the industry, over years, you start doing things more linearly in processes and so on, and forget that disruptors will happen. Like, for example, when Figma came on the scene with the collaborative workspace, the whole thing changed. Like, no one envisioned something like that would ever happen. Like, yeah, we had Google Docs where you could edit it. I mean, different products still had the same methodology, but Figma actually introduced it to the designer's workspace, and it overhauled the whole thing and how we work. So I'd say resourcefulness, keeping up with what's going on in the world. So, for example, ChatGPT. So you've probably heard of it in the last couple of months. I'm guessing AI will impact us quite a lot. And I don't mean this in a negative sense. I actually think if we adapt to it and think of ways where it can help us, we can still focus on the core values. So I'd say resourcefulness, forward thinking, researching, knowing how and when to research the problem that you're doing. And yeah, it's a difficult question. Like,
Yeah.
I'm grasping at straws here. I'll actually think about it. We can maybe discuss it a bit later on.
Sure.
Because off the top of my head, like, it's really hard, because I think we all came across multiple think pieces around how AI will impact the industry, what it's going to look like. Adobe bought Figma, and how are things going to look. So I think that's more of a technical standpoint, but the problem-solving aspects of it will probably stay pretty much the same. It will just be different problems.
True. And their job kind of is to solve problems, isn't
Exactly.
it? You've mentioned titles. So you said there were UX, UI designers, but you don't really do titles like that anymore, do you?
We currently just use designer, lead designer, design team lead. So those are our current titles. We discussed in depth about UX, UI, product design, and so on. But since we're an agency, it's rather difficult to figure out something that works across the board, because we have people who work on agency projects who shuffle quite a lot. And then we have people who are dedicated to a single project for months and sometimes years. So currently that's the division. So designer is the IC track that I talked about. Lead designer is someone who is more concerned around design processes and project work. And then we have the design team lead, which is the managerial position. But it's worth noting that the lead designers are really included in most of the decision making. So they're not just like a middleman, middle of the road. They actually impact our processes quite a lot, and actually fill in the gaps where we as design team leads just aren't able to maybe keep up with everything that's going on.
What would you say are different skills that you need as a design team lead and lead designer?
As a design team lead, I think the core value would be empathy and being able to connect with people. Because no matter how nice the conversation with your managers are, if you don't really connect to them, you probably won't bring up many of the problems that you're facing as an individual. And I think building that relationship requires specific soft skills. So being able to listen, connect, share your examples, having people trust you, and handling their issues with care, and sometimes just being a void for people to rant about things at work. Because I think one of the things that managers, one of the major hiccups that managers do when they start out, I'm also guilty of that, is jumping to solutions. So I don't know if you heard about the term solutionizing. So that's coming up with the solution on the spot and figuring out what to do next, when realistically it just seems a bit degrading maybe to the person, because they probably thought of those solutions themselves. They don't necessarily needed you to mention them again. But you as a team lead actually have to connect a bunch of different pieces. You see the bigger picture and have to transfer it to someone who maybe doesn't see it that way and needs to understand certain areas and how they impact each other. So I'd say as a team lead, you really need to know how to work well with people and handle delicate situations as well as stressful ones. So it's more of a personal connection, while the lead designer is more focused on the project work itself. They're concerned that everything on the project goes smoothly, that processes are kept up, that things are delivered at a certain standard of quality, and that we actually tailor our design process for that specific project. So their role of managing people is actually working with them alongside projects and helping them obtain not just a technical skill, but also how to think around problems, how to problem solve, and so on. I mean, we still do that part as well, but more, but it's not our core job.
So a little bit more mentoring on the project, on the work
Yes.
itself, but then kind of handling the career growth and improvement
Yes.
with the team leads. So
And
Nicolina,
general satisfaction, as well as a bunch of other things.
Nicolina has a question. Do you still have time or opportunity to design stuff as a team lead, or are you purely in a managerial role now?
I actually love this question because when I started out, I thought I could do both things at once. At the beginning, it's rough. Like, I don't think it's realistic to do both things at once in the beginning. Maybe if you ease yourself into it, get maybe one person to manage, then you get the second one in a month and so on, you kind of ease into it. That's when it might become feasible. But what actually happened to me was that I started out working on a project and being a team lead. And after a month or two, I actually asked to become a full-time team lead. I took on a bit more people than I had at that point. And I've been a full-time team lead for 2 years. And after 2 years, I pretty much grasped most of the standard thing. There's still, as I said, there's still a lot to learn, a lot of different scenarios pop up, which you never previously encountered. But after 2 years, I actually requested to work on projects again directly. And that was pretty cool. I'm still working on projects, but during those 2 years where I worked full-time as a team lead, I wasn't separated completely from projects. I still mentored all the people that were in my sub team, and I kept tabs on different projects as well. So we have something that's called coordination, and that is when a more experienced designer is actually checking in with how the project is doing. So we've been doing that before lead designers were introduced, and we're slowly going to maybe move that towards lead designers exclusively. Maybe we don't know. We're always changing stuff around. But we as team leads also kept tabs on a couple of strategically impactful projects. So we did know what's going on. We help people, we help them prepare workshops and figure out how to approach clients, how to solve frictions when they occurred with clients, and so on. So for some time, I was exclusively a team lead, but now actually all 4 of us are doing hands-on project work again. And that's pretty cool because I kind of missed it.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how do you fulfill this, creative itch or maker's itch if you're only doing managerial work?
I'm going to say something that's maybe a bit controversial, but actually, I get my creative fulfillment from doing things outside of work. Like, I seek it in doing illustration work and things where I don't have any boundaries and can explore as much as I want to. When working in any industry, so that is not IT specific, that's just being an adult and working. You have a job, you have restrictions, and you have to problem solve around them. And that's just the reality of it. Yes, it can be exciting. There are really exciting and forward-thinking projects that pop up. It's not mundane as I made it sound like, but yeah, I get that fulfillment from doing illustration work. So doing something that's quite different than what I do at work here. And that actually helps quite a lot, because whenever you want to express yourself creatively and you have restrictions, at some point you're just not going to be fulfilled as much as you maybe would like to. And I'm not saying that the job isn't fulfilling. It is fulfilling, but in different areas.
have another question from Carlo. So what is a big plus for you when working and mentoring those with little to none experience, so juniors?
Being able to take critique. I know, I'm sorry, this sounded like I'm an asshole. I actually think that being curious and open to adapting, changing, and that's actually something that I look for whenever I'm interviewing someone, how they respond to critiques, because that shows me quite a lot about the person and how far they can go once we hire them. So curiosity,
Okay.
and a quality that is also important is it's okay to ask for help, but asking for help without even trying to find a solution isn't the best look. So, I mean, if you're stuck after like 15, 30 minutes of research, of course, ask for someone for help. But that's something that's pretty important to me.
Okay. So this was for the juniors, actually, but what is the big plus in the mentoring for you as Mario?
Oh, for me,
Yes.
for me, mentoring juniors, I love to see the growth that people have in the first year or two. That's actually why I'm lecturing at the academy for, I think it's 4 generations now. I think we developed at least like 70, 80 students during that period, I think.
All the best.
And a bunch of them work either at this company, at other companies, are doing freelancing work. And something that's quite fulfilling for me is to see that growth and helping to guide that curiosity that they have. So that's probably the most interesting part for me. Like, for example, we recently, I think it was a year ago, we hired a colleague that went to the academy. She had absolutely no design experience previously. She actually signed up for the academy because she was quite interested in it and worked alongside. So she's actually a teacher who quit her teaching job in got into mentoring programs and is self-taught about design. So everything that she learned practically came to be in that span of a year and a half. Then she applied to the academy. Based off of her portfolio, I actually couldn't tell whether she had design experience, school, or anything. It was just that good. And then helping her through the academy program, and then hiring her, and then seeing her develop and tackle different obstacles and grow each and every day is pretty cool.
For me, it's always the light bulbs, you know, how their eyes sparkle when they get something.
Yeah.
Moment.
Yeah, when they ask you for something and then it clicks and then they just rush to their back to their computer.
Yeah, exactly. So we also talked about this progress from Infinium being a small company and Infinium being a little bit bigger company. So what would you say are the differences between the two?
From a smaller, I mean, you say smaller company, I think that's different for everyone. Some people might think like small company, like 10-ish people. When I came to the company, there was around 100 people. So they had processes, they had team divisions, they had guidelines. But as the years went on, we actually developed a lot more processes, as well as the industry itself pushed forward. So most of you know the expression jack of all trades, and that's actually what we had to be for quite some time. Because we were doing the research, the user interviews, usability testings. Then you had to facilitate workshops. do wireframes, then do UI, know how to do branding, then maybe do even some motion work. Then there's also illustration work. So it's a vast array of different skills that require different expertises. And something that changed mostly in the last couple of years is that the first segment, so research, workshops, and that first initial step, actually we put so much weight towards it that it became its own team. So now we have a product strategy team, which focuses on researching user interviews, stakeholder interviews, facilitating workshops. We still work really closely with them. We're like sister teams.
Yeah.
And I think that's the largest change that we had in our design team, where we could focus on developing the idea, and someone would help us to get all the components together so we can make a decision and be a unit in front of a client and figure out and have someone to bounce ideas off of. That would probably be one of the biggest changes. And the second one is that since we're such a large team, we can have people who specialize in certain areas. They're still not full roles for the progression framework. Maybe at some point they might become that, but we have people who are experts in doing 3D work and doing motion design and doing illustrations. So we don't expect everyone to know everything, but during certain times in a project, we just cherry pick different people to come in and do a certain part of the project. So that's something that changed quite a lot. It's not expected of everyone to know everything and do everything. I mean, it wasn't necessarily that way previously, but now we have a much broader skill set since there's more of us as well. Plus, with a company that grows in size, changes are bound to happen and processes have to be kept up. So not the design processes, but generally on a company level. So that's probably what changed the most. There's a lot more structure and planning around everything that we do.
So in my experience is if you start in a like early stage startup and you're one of the first few designers, everything is very, very messy, very fast. You have to be, like you mentioned, the jack of all trades. And then more going into enterprise, the things are more structured. You get your little piece of the process that in your opinion, do you think which part do you prefer? The things being very, very structured, the things being a little bit messy? What is your personal preference? Where do you find yourself?
Oh, I'm generally more of a fan of structure and order. But at some points, it just has to become a bit messy. You have to break a couple of rules, both for the design process, maybe company things, to get the job done and get your idea out. And that's some instances, for example, like I think being too in control will hinder you at some point and slow you down. It's good to have those train tracks and have clear guidelines of what to do, but knowing when to deviate from that is a skill by itself.
This reminded me of, I oftentimes see in junior or early mids designers that it's so frustrating, the uncertainty of the field. And, we've been taught that we need to find the right answer, but there's no right answer in this work. Like there are many possible answers for everything that we do, and how much frustration that is in the early years. Does it get better?
I think it gets better the more you show your work to other people. So the more you develop different ideas and then show them to people who maybe who have less context and less understanding of what they're looking at, you'd probably see a genuine reaction to the work that you're doing. Like, for example, even when people do hallway testings in companies, like they ask, for example, a developer or a QA or someone like that. Those people aren't, I wouldn't say, it's not a realistic sample of what goes on in the real world. You should get up and maybe ask someone from accounting, HR, so someone who's not that into all the latest apps, all the latest updates, latest technologies, and so on. So because that will give you a biased idea. But insecurity in your ideas is something that you never really overcome in that way, but you just get more comfortable with the idea of exploring and not being right in some cases. And that's pretty okay. That's what user testings are for. And I think the expectation that we do something in the ideal way isn't necessarily realistic, because there's not one ideal way to do anything. Because like just looking at A/B testings, yes, one of them will perform better generally, but the other solution perform better for quite a few other people. So it's just calling the shots and going with the solution that makes sense at that point with all the data and everything that you have.
So forging your path also in projects, not just in design career.
Yes.
Cool. We have another question. Moen's asking if you can please share 2 or 3 different methods for providing feedback on a design that's not perfect.
Well, first off, it's never going to be perfect. Let's just get that one out of the way. I think most of designers struggle with perfectionism because it's somehow ingrained in our brain that we have a certain vision, we want to get close to it, but that vision just isn't maybe necessarily that good. Yeah, you get close to it. You can get rather close to it, but it shouldn't demotivate you. So different methods of, I think it's really necessary to, when you're critiquing someone's work, I think a lot of us often jump into the screen without asking a couple of questions first. So gathering the context of where they are in the product sprint, whether this is an early draft, is this something that's quite polished, was this revised by developers? Do you have that context as well? So I think getting those questions out of the way at the beginning will put you in the right frame of mind. So that's quite important, and a lot of people actually miss that step because we're so used to solve problems that we see that we just jump straight into it. Because we actually noticed that when we had like critique meetings with a larger group, we had people with various opinions, and the person who was presenting the work could end up getting frustrated because it was too late in the product process to overhaul the whole thing. And you had 6 people telling you completely different things, but no one had enough context of what's going on. So it's either up to you to ask those questions or that person to provide that, so you can actually give feedback. But methods around providing feedback, I think directness, like being honest with people and not fluffing things up, because that's a mistake that I used to do in the beginning. So I would package it and put a bow on it up to a point where people were a bit confused with what I was saying. And that didn't really help anyone. And it's hindering people's careers. Because it's not that empathetic to disregard and kind of not point out things that people can do better, especially when you're in charge of developing their career. So I'd say being honest and maybe finding a language that works with that specific person. I don't think there's a method that works for everyone. But the earlier you start figuring out a good relationship with whose ever work you're critiquing, the better. So the earlier you have open communication around it, and make it clear that you distance the person from the work. I think that's crucial as well.
Great points. Yeah. Okay, so I have my last question, and so this event is the initiation of our second portfolio review. So this is for anybody that would like to get some feedback on their portfolio, or try out a bit of mock interviews, or figuring out, get some mentoring on next steps. We have 13 mentors lined up, and you will be able to apply from today on, and I will share the event. And she will also send you an email to anybody who applied to here. You can invite your friends, of course. Please do share. So my last question for you, Mario, is what makes a good portfolio?
I'm a fan of a portfolio that has 3 to 5 projects. So anything more than that will probably leave maybe a muddled image of what you do. So focus on the best work that you have. I actually really like when people have like an abridged version of their project, and then have a link where you can have the full case and full prototype and so on. So like, this is actually, you actually have to design your portfolio in a way that you design your products. So think of who is going to look at this and what they are looking for. Like, for example, if you did personas, user journeys, and so on, cool, but most people do, because that's the standard of the process. Like, give me highlights, give me whatever stood out while you were either user testing or challenges that you faced. So people really pointing out the challenges and how they solve them is a lot more interesting than having the linear breakdown of this happened, and this happened, and that happened, then I did this, and then this is the outcome. So I'd say try to look at it from a perspective of who you're presenting that portfolio to.
Cool. Thank you, Mario. We still have time for a few more questions. So if anybody wants to either unmute yourself or put some more questions into the chat, now would be the time.
No elevator music.
Yeah.
Just awkwardness, just pure awkwardness.
We have to give people space.
Oh, I think we're giving you the silent treatment.
I think so as well. Okay, I think we have a question.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to say hi. Thank you. I was listening the whole time. I wanted to show my face. So you don't talk to a bunch of black squares.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very
That's nice.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
I might have a question, maybe. It's
Maybe.
it's still formulating in my head.
Okay.
But
Go ahead.
I'm thinking out loud a little bit, and then maybe you can chip in. But I'm thinking about this concept as a leader of freedom and structure.
Mhm.
And, you know, when you lead a team, how much structure do you give, and then how much freedom do you give? And maybe, yeah, if you have any experience or yeah, opinions on how to find the balance, which one works at which, you know, context better, or like, what have you noticed?
Yeah, I actually have a pretty good example of that. We set goals every 6 months. So all our team members have their goals, their OKRs, and usually we come up with an idea of what we want them to achieve. So whether it's, I don't know, creating a blog post, introducing specific design system elements to their project, and so on. What I found was hindering to people is that if you give them a clear roadmap of what they should do, they learn far less from that experience, because we already solved the problem practically together. But if they know what the outcome is and where to start, that's when you give all the freedom to them, so they can explore, so they can make mistakes, so they can figure out and problem solve on their own. So I think it's necessarily like just like any project work that you're doing. Like, you know the problem, you know what you're up against, you know what you want the final outcome to be. So whether it's a usable flow, something that gets the point across to the user, but giving us as designers the freedom to explore and figure out the solution and the road to the solution ourselves actually helps us grow quite a lot. But whenever someone is maybe struggling with those steps, we always appreciate when someone is asking for help, because then we can create a rough outline and maybe stepping stones how to get to there. So I'd say putting a problem in front of someone and then having them explore how to solve it is probably the best way to go, without a rigid process and framework around it. Just give them the tools, resources, and support for them to figure it out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's more of a debate, but yeah, definitely, at least the part of planning work. Yeah, thank you.
Because if you already knew all the steps, probably it's a problem not worth solving, because you just could have been get it done in quarter of the time. Nicolina, you raise your hand.
Yeah, so I was actually wondering, have you ever taken any official courses or I don't know, studies regarding the leadership and managing stuff? Because I've heard some leads have taken those courses, but I was wondering if you had anything like that.
Yeah, I actually went to a course. I'm not sure what the English translation is, but it's called Vješti voditelj in Croatian. Okay, it's a thing. They actually have, that's actually something I did when I became a team lead. So we did have training in that aspect, and it was a 4-day course where we explored how to give feedback, provide feedback, how to de-escalate, how to make people work together, and how to generally manage people, and how to handle difficult situations, and how to actually look at ourselves and figure out what we need to improve on when dealing with people. So we did that. And of course, just like you have, you and every other designer has their team lead, I also have mine. I have a head of design who actually helps me quite a lot to figure out whenever I'm struggling with something, not someone, something. And that helps quite a lot. So having that ecosystem, plus I think team leads and managers often forget that their peers are actually other team leads. So talking to team leads from different teams and how they solved their issues and how they approached different different things in their team actually helps quite a lot, because you're still in the same framework of the same company, but you're dealing with it's a bit different, but you still get that experience. So I actually prefer learning from other people who are already in the know and are doing it currently, but that specific training by psychologists was quite useful, because I think actually Amedea mentioned this at some point. You're a designer and then you become a manager. Like, you have zero experience with managing people at that point. So yeah, some help needs to happen, and some guidance needs to happen at that point, because there's a lot of responsibility, a lot of things that you need to keep up with and figure out and solve situations on the go. So I'd say it's using the people around you who have experience in that and asking them for help, and just discussing things with them, not necessarily just solving a specific issue, but just talking to them would help quite a lot.
Also, for anybody that's stepping into the role, The Makings of a Manager from Julie Zhao is a really good read.
It's my Bible. I have the whole thing. I never annotate books, but that one has posted tabs, pen drawings, a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
I read it quite a few times, and I absolutely recommend it to anyone who's interested in becoming a manager, because probably just like me, you probably have a rough idea of what it actually is, but that book really gives you a good insight of everything that you're facing as a manager. Yeah.
We have another question. Maya is asking regarding creating a portfolio. You mentioned using only your best work, but at the beginning of your career, you don't have much to show. So you show what you have. What is your advice for a junior designer portfolio to stand out from others?
So is this related to just showing work that's in production and that's real, or are you talking about student projects and in general? Okay, so I'd rather see a fiction project that's executed well than okayish work that's realistic. Because when you get to the interview, we'll talk about your experience and what you do for work. Of course, mix the two, but if you're not that happy with the portfolio pieces that you have, go in and create something from scratch. Like, there's a book that's called Product Design Exercises, and at the end, there's I think actually it would be best if we maybe compile a list of links and books and then post it to LinkedIn later on, because at the end of the book, there's a bunch of different ideas and exercises which will get the juices going, and they are quite interesting, ideas. For example, there's a specific example where they give the idea to create a user interface for a music streaming platform, let's say Spotify, but you don't create the interface that we as end users see, but actually the interface where artists and labels manage their catalog, albums, singles, and so on, because that's something that people rarely think about, but there's a lot of exploration to do. It's something that's not close necessarily to you, so you actually have to do exploration. You can't just make things up and use your assumptions. So using those kinds of exercises would really help you create a fuller project. While not being a real project, it still does every step of the way in a correct way. And also framing your work in a way where it's closer to the job that you're applying to. So if you did more branding and more visual design, try to see how that maybe ties into the agency that you're applying to or the company that you're applying to. So whether they specialize in print, whether they specialize in digital design, that's quite important, because the same product can be shown from different angles.
Cool. We have time for one last question. So, and we are also doing the backstage session. So after we press the button stop recording, we can stay here and chat a little bit more. Mario has some more time to give to us.
Enjoy your daily, Nicolina.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I guess we'll just chat in the backstage. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Mario. I could chat to you for another 3 hours. So I think we'll have to do this again, if you'll be willing. So at ScreenSaverz School, we're teaching a lot of interesting courses, stakeholder management, design management. Also, we have quite a few beginner courses outside. So check our website. You can apply to our newsletter, which we successfully send once per month this year. And this is it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for spending your morning with us. And hope to see you at the next event.